Revealed, the one surprising clause that transformed a young black woman into a fearless advocate. Kiera held her breath, flipping through the faded pages of the family Bible, fingers trembling as she pulled out the unexpected letter. A jarring wave of disbelief hit her, an inheritance tied not just to money, but to a mantle she never anticipated. "You must advocate for social justice in our hometown." The words loomed before her, demanding her attention, her compliance. What did it mean for someone like her, bursting with dreams yet shackled by the weight of expectations? The triumph she once felt about the scholarship award now felt like an anchor dragging her under. Her mind raced. The prestigious university loomed in the distance, promising a new life, yet the burden of her grandfather's ultimatum brought a sickening pit to her stomach. This was her chance to eclipse her family's cycle of financial struggle, but would fulfilling this clause stake the very foundation of her identity? Anxiety wrapped around her chest as she considered the implications. Advocating for change meant confronting not only the systemic hurdles of her community but also potentially previous alliances that could crumble under scrutiny. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The pressure mounted as Kiera confronted the truth behind her community's facade. Racial disparities shadowed her hometown, invisible chains binding families like hers to a fate she feared she could never escape. She didn't just want to succeed for herself, her desire to break that pattern felt monumental. But how could she, a girl who had only just begun to find her voice, begin to challenge the very elites that benefited from the status quo? The risk felt unimaginable. Each turn ignited anger, but it also whipped up apprehension. Would her crusade bring only backlash? As Kiera collected herself for a confrontation that lay ahead, her breath quickened. The stakes were becoming too personal. Uncertainty gnawed at her every glance, every fleeting thought. The woman who raised her, who embodied resilience, could be put in harm's way. Kiera envisioned her mother's face, a mask of pride mingled with fear. Could Kiera follow through with her mission when the cost could be more than she bargained for? Then, a chilling message buzzed her phone, a warning from an unknown sender promising dire consequences for those who dared challenge the fabric of their community. The silence pressed down like a weight that threatened to crush her aspirations. Kiera felt her world tightening, drowning in doubt, breathless in the face of opposition. Every face she encountered, from classmates to community members, turned into silent specters, whispering the question that hung in the air: would she turn her back on safety or leap into the abyss for the sake of justice? As she stood on the precipice, poised for a pivotal town hall meeting that could dictate not just her future, but her community's, each heartbeat reverberated with urgency. Would anyone dare silence her now? The answer loomed ahead, waiting to unfold. Kiera's thoughts raced as she entered the town hall, the heavy wooden doors creaking ominously behind her. The room was filled with the tepid murmur of voices discussing local issues, the air thick with conflicting sentiments. In that moment, the significance of her role became painfully clear. This wasn't just another meeting, this was the genesis of something that could shatter complacency and challenge the very backbone of her community. Seated at the back, she scanned the crowd and spotted familiar faces: Eric, a childhood friend turned local advocate; Mrs. Thompson, a fierce grandmother known for her quiet strength; and others whose stories were woven into the fabric of her upbringing. Each shared a piece of her life's narrative, yet here they sat, unaware of the internal tumult that threatened to derail her once simple ambitions. Kiera felt a gaping chasm between her desire to uplift and the ominous weight of expectation pressing down her shoulders like a mantle. The meeting commenced, and as speakers took the podium one by one, they recited statistics about economic disparity, educational inequity, and systemic racism, but each syllable pushed Kiera deeper into a place of reflection. Were these numbers mere talking points, or did they represent the visceral reality of lives entangled in that struggle? An unsettling thought crept in: What if her advocacy wasn't just an opportunity to rise but also a risk that could ignite turmoil in her tightly knit relationships? As speakers turned their focus to the need for change, Kiera felt an inexplicable connection between their words and the inheritance she now grappled with. Each point they made about the injustices facing their community echoed her grandfather's edict. Did her quest for success hinge upon confronting these painful realities, or did it rest on her ability to navigate them delicately without losing her foundation? Her mind whirred with the concept of duality and identity as both an aspiring scholar and a reluctant advocate. Then came the moment Kiera feared most, an invitation to speak. The previous speakers seemed to have summoned a fortitude she envied, but as her name echoed through the hall, she froze. The weight of expectation surged through the air, its tendrils clutching her heart. She envisioned walking up to the mic, an embodiment of the internal struggle raging within her. Could she really articulate the nuances of her dilemma without retreating behind carefully constructed words? Kiera fought back tears as she stepped forward, her heart pounding a chaotic rhythm. As she grasped the cool metal of the microphone, the flickering lights above felt like intrusive eyes judging her resolve. She searched the crowd for reassurance in the familiar faces but found only the reflection of her own uncertainty. Would they support her or recoil from her radical honesty? Finally, gathering her thoughts into a single, cohesive message, she launched into the words that had been trapped within her. They poured forth like a dam, breaking a poignant mixture of her journey and her advocacy's significance, a call for understanding and courage from the community she both loved and feared. But as she spoke, she realized that liberating her voice meant acknowledging her fears as well. Doubts swirled around her perception of herself, a growing recognition that true accountability began in the face of discomfort. The response was immediate, a mix of applause and hesitant whispers, forming a cacophony of hope and skepticism that ignited a new urgency within her. She stood poised, feeling lighter yet afraid of the turbulence that might follow this step of declaration. Had she opened herself up to scrutiny or merely taken the first step on a path that could unlock more than just her future? As the meeting drew to a close, Kiera found herself engulfed in a storm of emotions: relief, anxiety, unyielding determination swirling through her in equal measure. She knew the ripple effects of her words had only just begun, but would the foundations she cherished withstand the weight of her truth? Each answer unfurled before her like a dark horizon filled with possibilities, challenging her to dive deeper into the abyss of not just advocacy, but into the essence of who she was becoming. Little did she realize, a figure lurked among the crowd, someone whose eyes were fixed on her with a quiet intensity. As she exited the hall, Kiera felt the prickle of awareness, the chill of an unwanted attention. What risks had she truly set in motion? In that moment, the story became charged with a new urgency, and the consequences began to loom vividly in her mind. Could she confront the inevitable backlash, or would the very challenges she dared to face become her undoing? Kiera stepped outside into the cool night air, the unforgiving weight of the meeting still pressing heavily on her chest. The amber glow from the town hall's windows flickered behind her like the last embers of a dying fire, and she could feel the tremor of uncertainty in her legs as she walked toward her car parked in the dimly lit lot. The voices of her peers echoed in her mind, blending into a buzzing tide of doubt and resolve. She jumped into the front seat and sat in silence, grappling with the enormity of what she had just unleashed. The applause felt like a distant echo now, replaced with a stark reminder that her words would resonate beyond that evening, echoing through her relationships and within her community. What could she say to Eric tomorrow? He had always seen the good in her and encouraged her to advocate for change. Yet now, what if he felt betrayed by her newly spoken truths? Or worse, what if Mrs. Thompson, the stalwart matriarch who had nurtured her hopes with kindness, disapproved of her approach? Kiera clenched the steering wheel, desperate for stability as she navigated the tumult of conflicting emotions. As the engine purred to life, Kiera's hazy reflection in the rearview mirror appeared strained. She couldn't ignore the prick of shame creeping in, mingled with a bubbling foundation of renewed intention. "Why did I have to say all of that?" she mumbled, caught off guard by her own voice breaking the silence. Yet another layer of discomfort surfaced. There was a part of her fears rooted in her upbringing that wrestled with the idea that authenticity could be detrimental rather than liberating. In that moment, as she drove through the empty streets, Kiera faced a sudden, visceral understanding. to advocate meant not just breaking free from the past but reworking it into something new. She felt like a sculptor chipping away at an unyielding block of marble, desperately trying to reveal the form trapped inside while risking injury with each strike of her hammer. Just as the moon peeked through a shroud of clouds, Kiera's thoughts morphed. Something profound clicked, a realization that she no longer saw advocacy as an external challenge. The confrontation wasn't limited to the people at the meeting, it began within herself. What if challenging community norms and discussing uncomfortable truths was the key to empowerment? What if she could turn her fear into a source of strength rather than a barrier? Pulling into her driveway, Kiera examined the fraught interplay of choice and consequence. Tackling the inertia of her community wasn't merely a responsibility, it was a personal mission, one that required her to unearth the very fabric of her identity. She needed to come face to face with the fears that had plagued her, confront the tight grip of expectations, and discover how to weave her truths into the legacy she wanted to leave behind. As she stepped inside her home, with the comforting embrace of familiar surroundings, the anticipation of tomorrow bore down on her like a heavy fog. She could sense the upcoming confrontation with individuals who had shaped her life and beliefs. How would they react? Would she make an ally of her past or provoke resistance? And in that moment, a flicker of resolve ignited within her. She could prepare for confrontation, she could seek clarity in the chaos. Maybe even amend relationships that felt frayed. But the notion brought another realization: confronting the people she cared about would test her mettle in unforeseen ways. How could she balance honesty with the hope of maintaining these irreplaceable connections? With her phone in hand, Kiera hesitated before calling Eric, each ring amplifying the heightened urgency in her chest. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was no turning back now. The decision hung in the air: was she ready to confront her deepest fears alongside the community she needed to engage? Before she could summon the courage to press call, a notification popped up on her screen. An unknown number. She instinctively felt the chill of recognition prickle her skin. What awaited her could disrupt everything she had just summoned the courage to begin. Kiera's heart raced as she stared at the notification. The unknown number felt more like a bomb ticking down than a mere message. Could it be someone from the town hall? An anonymous critic? Or worse, someone who had heard her speak and wanted to tear down her growing confidence? With a shaky hand, she clicked on the notification, her pulse quickening. It opened into a text that read, "Kiera, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. J." The initial thrill of curiosity was quickly drowned in a wave of anxiety. Jay, who was Jay? The name triggered a fleeting memory, an old acquaintance from her days in high school who once inspired her to embrace leadership but had since faded from her orbit. Was this connection truly significant, or simply a coincidence? Kiera mulled over the possibilities, weighing her options. She could ignore the message and focus on the impending conversations with Eric and Mrs. Thompson, or she could engage, delve into the unknown, and perhaps discover something transformative. The latter felt like a siren-esque call to a deeper level of her personal growth, but it could also divert her focus at a critical moment. No longer willing to linger in speculation, Kiera took a deep breath and typed back, "What's going on?" As she waited for a reply, doubt crept back in. Was this a distraction she couldn't afford? Just as she stewed in her uncertainty, her phone pinged again. "Let's meet at the cafe tomorrow morning. I have something important to share." The invitation lingered ominously, casting shadows over her already tangled emotions. She wanted to refuse, to dismiss the entire encounter in favor of preparing for her dialogues that loomed ahead. But the unshakable feeling that this meeting could somehow interweave with her journey propelled her to agree. "Okay, see you at 8, she texted. As she set her phone down and moved through her nightly routine, Kiera couldn't shake the sense that she was standing on the precipice of change. Each moment spent brushing her teeth or slipping beneath the covers felt thick with possibility. Would this chance meeting open her eyes to something unforeseen or rattle her resolve? The next morning arrived with an unsettling anticipation. The sun slipped through her window, washing the room in golden light, as if urging her to embrace whatever fate awaited. She dressed carefully, selecting her favorite blazer, a color she often wore when she wanted to feel empowered. It felt like armor. Upon arriving at the cafe, Kiera scanned the crowd. A rush of familiarity washed over her as she spotted Jay, seated at a corner table with an anxious expression. They exchanged brief pleasantries, but the tension was palpable, a shared understanding that something significant hung in the air. "Before I left town, I saw what you did last night," Jay began, breaking the silence. "You might not realize how powerful your words were. But they're going to cause waves, Kiera. Waves that'll force us to look deeper at what we've always accepted." She felt a mix of pride and tension, riding the edge of exhilaration and dread. Here was validation, a glimmer of recognition, yet it was laden with the acknowledgement of inevitable challenges that lay ahead. As Jay continued, the narrative pulled Kiera into direct confrontation territory. "But there is something you need to know about yourself still. Something that could change how you approach all of this." Kiera felt a shift inside her. What was that something? The familiar pulse of doubt threatened to consume her, counterbalanced by the stirring instinct that perhaps, just perhaps, this was the catalyst she'd been needing to bridge her past with her emerging advocacy. "Tell me," she pressed, leaning in, ready to absorb whatever wisdom awaited. The revelation felt imminent, ready to unravel the threads of her understanding. Kiera sensed that this conversation could turn the tide, leading her on a path previously obscured. What Jay had to share might redefine not just her advocacy journey but also her very essence. Without letting her guard down, she braced for the truth that could challenge everything she thought she knew about herself. Jay's gaze pierced through the cafe's morning bustle, her eyes glistening with a mixture of urgency and empathy. "Kiera, it's not just about the speech," she continued, her voice steady yet charged with anticipation. "It's about who you are beneath all that talent. You've always been a leader, but there's a specific quality within you that's begging to be acknowledged." Kiera's heart drummed louder, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She knew she had potential, but Jay's perspective revealed a subtle shift she had yet to recognize, one that could crystallize her purpose into something tangible. "What do you mean?" Kiera asked, her mind racing with possibilities. Was this the moment where her latent strengths would finally materialize? Jay leaned closer, lowering her voice. "It's your vulnerability that makes you relatable. For so long, you shared your struggles only in whispers, but now it's time to shout them from the rooftops. There's a profound strength in honesty, Kiera. You can weaponize your experiences." A wave of realization washed over Kiera. Vulnerability had always felt like a liability to her, an admission of weakness that could be exploited. But as she listened to Jay, the foundations of that fear began to tremble. Could authenticity be her greatest asset in advocating for others? "Think about it," Jay pressed on. "There are so many who feel lost and unheard. Your story could be the bridge connecting them to hope. It's not about pretending to be invulnerable, but instead embracing the very moments that shaped you." Kiera's mind flashed back to her high school years, recounting the painstaking process of discovery that felt so isolating. But now, with distant memories merging with present concerns, she saw a glimmer of possibility. Sharing her truth might build the very connections she sought to cultivate in her advocacy work. "What if they reject me?" she whispered, a flutter of doubt creeping back. This feeling of wanting to be liked, of fearing judgment, had clung to her like a shadow. "Rejection is part of the journey," Jay affirmed, her tone firm yet gentle. "But think about the impact of those who feel seen because of your courage. It could inspire countless others, and in the process, you'll inspire yourself." Kiera nodded slowly as she mulled over Jay's words. The prospect of stepping into that vulnerability felt daunting but exhilarating. Each nerve in her body sparked with the possibility of transformation. "Okay," she said, feeling an unfamiliar resolve take root. "So how do I start? Where do I even begin to unravel all of this?" "You start right here, today. Your next speech, it should not only convey hope but raw honesty. Talk about your failures, your fears. Reinvent how you approach your audience. They need to see Kiera, not just the polished speaker." Jay's eyes sparkled with encouragement, igniting a flame within Kiera. As their conversation drifted into practical strategies for her next public appearance, Kiera felt barriers crumbling inside her. Every suggestion felt like a step on a tightrope that could lead her to something life-changing. The anticipation of speaking her truth loomed like horizon colors at dawn, terrifying yet beautiful. Kiera scribbled ideas on a napkin, her pulse steadying as clarity washed over her. This wasn't merely a dialogue about advocacy, it was about self-discovery, a mission that had been waiting to unfold. However, a whisper of uncertainty nagged at her heart. Would society embrace this newfound honesty? As the cafe's ambience buzzed around them, Kiera couldn't help but wonder if she was truly ready to confront the possible backlash. Just as Jay finished outlining her ideas, a shadow crossed Kiera's mind. Was this shift truly enough to redefine her purpose, or would it only further complicate an already turbulent journey? I can start with my upcoming talk, but what happens if they don't connect with my story? Kiera's voice was low, her grip tightening on the napkin. Then you find your tribe, Jay answered unwaveringly. The ones who change the world never back down from revealing who they are. Kiera inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of that challenge settle on her. The next phase of her advocacy journey had just revealed itself, and alongside it, the unsettling possibility that real courage came with real risks. As they moved to wrap up the meeting, Kiera knew she was standing at a critical juncture. She could sense the transformative path ahead, but would her bravery sustain her as she prepared to face the world while fully embracing who she truly was? With a mix of determination and trepidation, she glanced at Jay, who was already gathering her things, a knowing smile on her face. This moment had the potential to change everything. Thank you, Jay. But I can't help but wonder. Kiera trailed off, feeling the weight of unspoken questions pressing on her chest. What if this is just the beginning? Jay replied, her eyes twinkling with the unspoken understanding that somewhere ahead lay even more pivotal moments waiting to challenge Kiera's resolve. Kiera shivered at the thought. What lay ahead felt both electrifying and daunting. But could she step into this unraveling journey, armed with her truth, ready for whatever was to come? Kiera's mind raced as she left the cafe, the warm sunlight coaxing her thoughts into motion. Each step felt heavy and infused with anticipation, her heart thundering like a drum as she replayed Jay's words. Find your tribe. What did that mean? Would anyone actually resonate with her unvarnished truth? She was stepping into uncharted territory, and with every moment, the stakes grew higher. Wandering aimlessly through the nearby park, the vibrant hues of spring seemed to energize her. Children laughed, couples strolled hand in hand, and the world burst with life. Yet, amid the joy, the thrum of anxiety churned within her. Kiera had spent years hiding behind a mask of composure, a carefully curated version of herself polished to perfection. What if the raw version she was now contemplating sharing was still too unrefined to be accepted? Stopping near a blooming cherry blossom tree, she closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, the sweet fragrance enveloping her senses. She thought of the people she admired, activists, artists, writers, each one had bared their soul in vulnerability. It was the stories soaked in authenticity that had struck a chord with her. Perhaps Jay was right. But that nagging fear remained, a whisper screaming about the possibility of rejection. Sweeping away her wavering thoughts, Kiera decided she needed to channel this anxiety into a concrete plan. She pulled out her phone and opened a notepad app. Draft a speech, she typed, letting out a sigh. Talk about failures and fears. As she wrote, ideas surged from the depths of her mind, each one slowly spinning a narrative canvas on which authenticity would paint the larger picture of her journey. But what would she say? Kiera wasn't sure where to begin. She scrolled through her memories, painful rejections, moments of doubt, the loneliness of navigating spaces where she felt invisible. She remembered sitting in a room full of people but feeling like she was submerged underwater, struggling to find air. That was a pivotal moment, but it was also just a starting point. How could she connect those moments to the advocacy work she wanted to push forward? Okay, she murmured, her fingers flying over the screen with renewed vigor. Embrace vulnerability without apology. Each word felt empowering, a mantra for the speech she was beginning to craft. Kiera began to sketch the structure of her talk, threading her experiences like stitches into the fabric of a narrative that aimed to bring life to her truth. With every point she outlined her struggles with self-worth, the passions that ignited her drive. A new version of Kiera emerged, one who embraced her past rather than shied away from it. But a paralyzing thought flooded her mind: the impending presentation. What if I'm not enough? She typed, the question echoing into the silence around her. What if the very essence of her story that she planned to share would fall flat? Would she really find the connections Jay had spoken about, or would she expose herself only to face indifference? Determined, she leaned back against the tree, feeling its rough bark ground her thoughts. Maybe she didn't have to have every answer now. Each word she wrote was a declaration of bravery, carving out her space in a world that often dismissed voices like hers. Suddenly, a flight of birds took off above her, soaring freely. Inspired by their liberation, Kiera pondered the relentlessness of her dreaming. I can't hold back, she whispered to herself. I have to commit to this new path. At that moment, she resolved to meet with Jay once more for feedback, to further flesh out the speech. Engaging in dialogue about her ideas felt essential, perhaps a safety net she could lean on as she prepared for this leap into vulnerability. Nevertheless, part of her yearned for the chance to solidify her own voice without over-reliance on others. As she stood, brushing off the remnants of the grass from her skirt, clarity washed over her like the shimmering sunlight that filtered through the leaves. With newfound conviction and a plan forming in her heart, Kiera felt her shoulders lift. Real transformation didn't come from an imagined perfection, it arose from the genuine, messy dance of experiencing life as it truly was. Still, an unsettling question lingered as she turned back toward her path, fueled by a fierce determination to embrace her journey. What if this decision led to a revelation about her purpose that was deeper than mere vulnerability? Drawing in a steadying breath, she felt the pulse of possibility quicken. The time had come to explore the uncharted depths of her story, but at what cost? As she stepped forward, the world around her became a stage and she the protagonist of her own unfolding narrative, an advocate in the making, not just for others but for herself. Would she find the courage to fully reveal her truth, or would the fear of judgment hold her back once again? Kiera arrived at Jay's apartment with a mix of excitement and trepidation, her heart fluttering as she ascended the steps. The feedback she sought felt like a lifeline, one she desperately needed to navigate the turbulent waters of her fears. Each knock on the door echoed like a countdown, she could almost see the words of her draft swirling in her mind, waiting for validation. When Jay opened the door, his warm smile calmed her nerves a fraction. Hey, you made it. How's the speech coming along? It's evolving, she admitted, stepping inside. Kiera inhaled the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, grounding herself in the comfort of familiarity. She appreciated how warmth radiated from the small, cozy space, it reflected the demeanor she hoped to achieve in her speech. Want to share what you have? Jay asked, gesturing for her to take a seat. Kiera hesitated. The idea of exposing her vulnerable thoughts terrified her, but she was determined to share. Yeah, I think it's time. As she unfolded her notes, she felt the weight of the moment bearing down, urging her to rise above the self-doubt that usually held her captive. As she spoke, her voice trembled slightly, but she pressed on, recounting her stories of rejection and fear. Each word was a step closer to the authenticity she yearned for, but as she conveyed her struggles, she couldn't shake the tension curling in the pit of her stomach. Jay listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. That's powerful stuff, Kiera. But what's the takeaway? What do you want your audience to feel after hearing your story? His question sent a jolt through her. She opened her mouth to respond, but words eluded her. I want them to understand that it's okay to fail. That embracing our fears can lead to strength. Right. But also, what you went through is unique to you. It's not just about fear, it's about perseverance. Connect the dots for them. Show how each experience shaped where you are now. His words tugged at an unpolished part within her, one that longed to illustrate the journey vividly. But how can I present that without sounding like I'm just a list of sad stories? She asked, betraying the insecurity that still lingered. Don't focus on the sadness, Jay replied gently. Instead, highlight resilience. Talk about what you've learned through your experiences. Show them your armor, not just the wounds. As she processed this advice, Kiera felt an exhilarating surge of potential. This wasn't just about her story, it was a chance to motivate others to embrace their vulnerabilities and rise from them. Okay, she breathed, her fingers tapping her notes again as clarity dawned. I can do that. I want them to see how I transformed those failures into fuel. To realize that connection with our struggles is where true strength lies. Jay smiled, clearly pleased. Yes. You're onto something there. Now, what about the fear of judgment you mentioned? How does that affect you, and what would you say to someone who feels the same? Kiera's heart raced at the mere thought of those words hanging in the air. She could feel the familiar weight of judgment pressing down on her, but for the first time, instead of flinching, she was ready to confront it head-on. I'd tell them that those who judge often don't understand, that vulnerability is a strength. A connection, not a liability. This acknowledgement unleashed an inner tide of courage. The idea of standing before an audience and sharing all of herself was still daunting, but Kiera knew that authenticity would be her superpower. I have to embrace this fear, she murmured. Jay leaned back, regarding her with an approving gaze. Exactly. And remember, sharing that fear might resonate with someone else deeply. It shows you understand the stakes, which makes your journey even more relatable. Kiera could feel the fog of self-doubt begin to lift, replaced by a burgeoning sense of agency. Yet just as the excitement settled, doubt reared its head again. But what if I still hold back? What if I talk about my struggles but leave out the parts that really frighten me? The question hung in the air. Would she be brave enough to lay bare her innermost demons, the raw truths that could shake the foundation of her existence? Kiera detected the paradox of her growth. The journey was not just about sharing but fully opening herself up to the world, unshackled and unfiltered. Seeing the flicker of conflict in her eyes, Jay inched closer. This is your chance, Kiera. Don't just tell your story. Own it. As she glanced at her notes once more, Kiera felt the urgency of the moment settle upon her. Would she step into the arena as an unrefined version of herself, and would it be enough? What if embracing her authentic self meant exposing her deepest fears? With her heart racing and the weight of her truth lingering in the air, Kiera wrestled with the decision looming ahead. Would she find the courage to expose herself fully in pursuit of becoming the advocate she dreamed of being, or would the fear of judgment shackle her once more? Kiera sat motionless, her gaze fixed on the scattered notes before her as J's words echoed in her mind. Own it. The directive felt monumental, a gateway to unlocking a part of her identity she had long kept hidden. Doubt coiled tightly around her. Would her vulnerabilities resonate with an audience? What if they simply didn't get it? But clawing beneath that fear was something deeper, a stirring realization that she had wielded her pain as an excuse for too long. No more. The powerful ache of self-awareness pierced through her defenses. Kiera took a breath, absorbing the comforting scent of coffee that hung in the air, grounding her. She began to write, furiously penning thoughts that spilled forth as if they were waiting for their moment. The haze of self-doubt transformed to clarity, and it ignited a fire within her. Embracing her truth wouldn't mean painting herself as a victim, it meant spotlighting the warrior forged through adversity. She began to draft stories that moved beyond mere recollections of hardship. What if she shared the lessons learned, the unexpected strength discovered in her moments of vulnerability? What if I titled it, From Fear to Fierce? Kiera mumbled under her breath, writing feverishly. Jay lifted an eyebrow, impressed. That's a solid title. It embodies the essence of who you've become. The conversation shifted to specifics. Why did she want to advocate? What were the defining moments that chipped away at her walls? With every point Kiera articulated, her passion became clearer, and with it, the fear of judgment began to fade. repeatedly rephrasing her messages how she overcame rejection, dealt with stigma, and transformed her experiences into strengthened her resolve. "And what will you do when you step up on that stage?" Jay prompted, nudging her further. "Visualize it." Kiera closed her eyes, willing her imagination to conjure a crowd before her. She imagined their faces expectant, open even, perhaps waiting for someone like her to legitimize the messy, painful side of growth. This wasn't just a performance, it was a communion of sorts. She could see their nods of understanding, recognition, and perhaps, a moment where someone might even shed a tear. "I'll speak like I'm having a conversation," she decided aloud, excitement bubbling beneath her skin. "I'll share not just the scars, but how they connect to a larger picture, a beautiful tapestry of struggles and triumphs." The exhilaration was palpable, igniting each synapse with dreams long buried in self-doubt. "That's it," Jay agreed. "When you present, think of it as sharing a gift." In that moment, Kiera felt the fissure within her expand into a space bursting with potential. She wasn't just illuminating her journey, she was inviting others to consider their own. The darkness dissipated, making way for the radiant glow of empowerment. If she could transform her shared experience into a message of hope and encouragement, perhaps she could change lives, including her own. Yet, as enthusiasm surged through her, whispers of apprehension lingered. What if she encountered those who would dismiss her narrative? What if they criticized her authenticity? Her mind raced with scenarios, the possible backlash that lured like a predator in the shadows. "Every great advocate faces criticism," Jay offered, sensing her retreat. "What matters is your conviction. Own that." Kiera nodded resolutely but felt the anxiety creep back as she realized the stakes were rising. This journey wasn't simply about public speaking, it was about rediscovering her own identity and purpose under the glaring light of others' scrutiny. As she gathered her notes, a persistent question rose within her, echoing louder than before: was she truly ready to embrace her fears completely? To step out boldly and challenge not only the audience but also herself? In the sanctuary of J.'s apartment, excitement and dread coexisted, creating a potent mixture of uncertainty. Kiera's pulse quickened. The moment of truth approached, and the implications loomed larger than life. Was she ready to put everything on the line and relinquish control over her narrative? With a final, determined breath, she realized this was just the beginning of her battle. Kiera resolved to harness her narrative, both its power and its peril, boldly embracing the complexity of her journey and preparing to confront the world. But as she envisioned the stage, she couldn't shake the haunting question lingering at the edge of her consciousness. What if embracing her truth meant facing the very people she feared most, the naysayers waiting to pounce? The veil of uncertainty hovered, ready to unveil another layer in her evolution. Kiera emerged into the world with a newfound sense of determination. With her notes clutched tightly in her hands, she navigated through the bustling streets, each step feeling lighter yet heavier with purpose. The sun shone brightly overhead, illuminating her path, but also reflecting the internal struggle still simmering beneath her surface. She replayed her conversation with Jay, mentally rehearsing the ideas that surged through her mind. From fear to fierce. The title resonated within her, a mantra that both frightened and exhilarated her. This was her chance to redefine herself, to own her experiences, but doubt crept back in like an unwelcome shadow. What would happen when she stood before a group, when her vulnerabilities were exposed, when her journey unveiled itself? Kiera sank onto a bench in the park, the distant laughter of children infusing the air with a semblance of joy. She took a deep breath, recalling how liberating it had felt to shift from a victim mentality to that of a warrior. What if she framed her experiences as stepping stones instead of stumbling blocks? The idea was compelling. She needed to dig deeper within herself, embrace the fight that had shaped her into who she was. The quiet of the park provided space for reflection. She began to jot down potential stories, pivotal moments that illustrated her transformation. The time she faced rejection and transformed it into motivation, she penned it down. The stigma she battled, the way she learned to give herself grace instead of criticism, that too. Each word was a step forward, a clear articulation of her past woven into a tapestry of resilience, yet, an undercurrent of fear remained, ruminating like heavy fog. What if her stories didn't resonate? What if her ability to connect with the audience fell flat? She recalled times when she had felt dismissed, invisible, and wondered if she could turn that feeling around this time. As she scribbled, a nearby conversation broke through her thoughts. Two women were discussing the importance of authenticity, the challenges of vulnerability. A chill ran through Kiera. Their dialogue echoed her own doubts. To be seen is to be at risk, one said, and the words hit her like a misplaced punch. Yes, to let herself be seen meant exposing every jagged edge of her story to potential criticism, but hadn't she already risked so much? With each line she wrote, Kiera could feel her spirit begin to revolt. She had endured, had clawed her way through darkness to find light. What if there lay incredible power in those moments of exposure? It was time to challenge her limits, confront the naysayers in her own mind before they manifested in reality. Suddenly, the thought of seizing the stage transformed from a knot of anxiety into a vibrant pulse of purpose. She was not simply preparing to speak, she was preparing to ignite change, starting with herself. Each criticism she feared could sharpen her narrative rather than dull it. What if instead of dreading judgment, she welcomed it as a chance to grow stronger? Kiera stood, brushing off the remnants of uncertainty. She decided she wouldn't run from potential rejection but would confront it. Those feelings would no longer hold her hostage. The conversation within her shifted. I am ready to engage, to show them that every experience, even the painful ones, can catalyze growth. Determined, she returned to J.'s apartment, her notes vibrant with passion and possibilities. She would transform doubt into a narrative of empowerment. Her voice would not only tell her story but resonate with others, becoming a beacon of courage. As she approached the door, anticipation swelled. But within her, another question took root. What if the true challenge lay not in public perception but in her own perception of worthiness? The inkling of this thought set her pulse racing with both excitement and dread. She opened the door, ready to transform not just her story, but her identity itself. Now, however, she faced a new frontier. Could she truly believe in her significance in a world eager to undermine her? The journey was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun, and the battle for her self-worth loomed ominously ahead. Kiera stood on the stage, her heart a steady thrum against the backdrop of eager faces. The familiar anxiety clawed at her, but there was an unfamiliar strength coursing through her veins. She had mapped her journey through vulnerability, penned every nuance of her struggle, and now, she was ready to share the most authentic part of herself. Moments before stepping up to the microphone, Kiera recalled the countless hours spent crafting her speech, the late-night conversations with Jay, and the unwavering support from those closest to her. Each story she had chosen to weave into her narrative represented not just a battle overcome but a testament to her willingness to grow and change, personally and professionally. As the spotlight warmed her skin, Kiera took a deep breath. She caught sight of familiar faces among the crowd: Eric's encouraging nod, Mrs. Thompson's proud smile, and a sea of strangers ready to receive her truth. The energy surged through her. She realized this was no longer merely about advocacy. It was about affirming her journey, reclaiming her narrative, and redefining what courage truly meant for her. When her voice broke the silence, it was strong and unwavering. Today, I want to tell you about my journey from fear to fierce, she declared, her words spilling forth with an intensity that resonated through the auditorium. Kiera didn't just recount her struggles, she painted them in broad strokes, illustrating how each obstacle had shaped her perspective. And then, as she glimpsed the audience leaning in, she connected her failures to the beauty of resilience. She spoke of the rejections that had once anchored her in doubt, transforming them into fuel for her ambitions. Each story unfolded like a blossom in spring, revealing the scars that had forged her spirit without compelling her into silence. As Kiera shared moments of vulnerability, her audience held their breath, and the room pulsed with shared understanding. No longer did she feel just like an advocate, she felt like a community of shared experiences, weaving connections rooted in authenticity, the applause that followed her last words washed over her like rain on parched earth. It was a melody of hope and recognition, echoing back to her the strength she had once doubted. As she stepped down from the stage, something monumental had shifted within her. She had not only spoken from a place of truth but had affirmed her rightful place as a force for change. In the days following, the impact of her speech rippled through her community. Kiera received countless messages of gratitude, people reflecting on their own vulnerabilities and seeking solace in her story. Each text bolstered her confidence, revealing just how her authenticity had sparked a movement of connection among those longing for representation. The tangible recognition came during a community gathering when the mayor acknowledged Kiera's contribution to the local dialogue on social justice. "Your bravery inspires us all. You have reminded us that it's our personal stories that shape our collective future," he declared, the pride evident in his voice. Kiera felt an overwhelming swelling of pride. She had transformed her fears into a source of power, her identity from that of a passive observer to an influential voice. As Kiera stepped outside later that evening, the setting sun cast a warm glow, illuminating the new paths that lay ahead. She realized that in courageously embracing her narrative, she had carved out her identity not merely as an advocate but as a leader, an embodiment of agency striving to impact change. She felt a solid confidence coursing through her. The fear that once clouded her vision had dissipated, replaced by an unwavering resolve to continue her advocacy within her community. Reflecting on this journey, Kiera recognized the immense growth she had achieved. Turning challenges into opportunities for connection, she had learned the importance of embracing vulnerability and authenticity. She stood tall in her newfound competence, fully aware that true transformation began within and resonated outward. This was her moment. The legacy she wished to leave had started to unfold, one story at a time. Kiera smiled to herself, fully knowing that embracing her truth would lead to even greater adventures ahead. With every step she took toward her future, she wore her experiences like armor, ready to face not just the world but herself. As she glanced at her phone, filled with new messages waiting for her reply, the realization struck her: she was not just ready for the challenges that lay ahead, she was prepared to help others find their voices. You need to subscribe now to catch more emotional journeys of transformation like Kiera's. Leave a like right now to support this channel because it truly helps us reach more individuals hungry for growth. Comment below with your thoughts on Kiera's story and your own theories about advocacy. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion.